Hello, welcome back to Random Vids. So last week, I did ranking every 101 Dalmatians the series episodes, like every single episode. However, I didn't finish it. I stopped at 50 because, well, it was getting really long, and the video was getting really long as well. So, today, we'll be doing the second half of that. So this is episodes 49 to 1, I guess. Only if I get tired and lazy and just stop it at 30. I hope I don't do that. I hope I finish it all today. Hope I finish the rest of it. So, yeah, this is the second half. I guess this is the better half of the episodes, the ones that I really do like. Now, there was some in the later ones last time that I liked as well, but, I mean, now we're getting to the ones that are above average, like 50, like, like 55 to about 45, something like that, is more the ones that are, like, in the middle. After that, it gets really above average, and, yeah. So, I mean, there's not much I really have to add, so let's just move right on to the video. So, we're going to start right off at number 49, which is Rule Out the Pork Barrel. So this one is the one where Rully and Mayor Pig decide to work together to, I guess, just, I don't know, accomplish what they want. And yeah, I've talked about this one already, so there's not much I really have to add. It's a pretty good episode, I guess. So, I mean, one that actually is likable for Mayor Pig. So, and normally there's some of the episodes, actually not some, but most of the episodes with him in it are he's kind of rude and mean, but this one he was fine. So, it's pretty good, so we'll move on. Number 48 would go to Spots and Shots. I don't know if I mentioned this already. Oh, I did. But this is the very first episode that I watched of the series. And heck, it's a pretty good first one to watch. So, Lucky doesn't want to get a shot. Neither does Cruella. Nah, I'm just kidding. It's just Lucky. He doesn't want to get a shot. Normally, he's not the type who'd be afraid of stuff. Normally, that award either goes to Cadpig, Spot, or Rolly. But okay, it's a pretty decent episode, and yeah, it, I guess, is on the higher list for me. Number 47 would go to Robo-Rolly. So, yet again, this is another episode with that one villain. And, yeah, I mean, it's a pretty good one. Like I've said before many times, I just like episodes with Rolly being center of attention because he doesn't get too many of them. And this one's a pretty good one, so, I mean, there's not much I have to add about this episode that I've already talked about. It's a pretty good episode, and it's enjoyable to watch, so we're gonna move on. Number 46 would go to Nah or Never. I've already talked about this one as well, and yeah, it's like Robo-Rolly, just, well, better, I think, in my opinion. Robo-Rolly is a pretty good episode, mainly because center of attention is on Rolly, but I think this one is even better yet. So there's not much I really have to add about this episode. It's a really good episode, and one that I enjoy watching, so we'll move on. Number 45 would go to Beauty Pandemonium. Pagant. That's what it's called. So, this one is the one with Anita's niece, Amber, and Corella's niece, Ivy. This is the one that they both meet, and yeah, it's a really good episode, and it's one that I enjoy watching every once in a while. So, I mean, there's not much I really have to add about this one that I've already talked about. It's good enough for what it is, and yeah. So, let's move on. Number 44 would go to Poison Ivy. This is the one with Cruella's niece only, and the first episode with her in it. And, well, is she a likable character? Not really at all, honestly. I like Cruella better. Ivy's just doesn't have the humor that Cruella does. And she's kind of annoying as well. But, I mean, episode-wise, it's pretty good, and it's pretty enjoyable. So, there's not much I have to add that I've already talked about already. So, let's move on. Number 43 would go to Cupid Pups. So this is the one with Corella versus that one lady. I forget her name. They're kind of fighting over a man, I guess. And well, it's a pretty silly episode, and I mean, I've already talked about this one before. It does kind of remind me of that other Valentine's Day episode, whatever that one's called. Forget what that one's called, but it's another Valentine's Day episode. This one is a pretty good one. Cupid Pups, I mean, it's pretty good. It's a pretty good special for sure, and definitely a really good one. So, I mean, let's move on. Number 42 would go to Cupid Pups. I don't know if I said if this was number 42 or not, but if I didn't, well, this one's number 42. And Cupid Pups. This one I actually changed my mind on. Before, it was one of the more earlier episodes in my ranking, but now that I watch it a lot more, it's actually a lot more enjoyable than meets the eye. I still kind of agree what I've said before, which it is still a little boring, but it still can be really interesting at times as well. Like, I don't mind this episode. It's actually interesting, and it's pretty good. So, it's definitely, I guess it deserves the higher spot of the list. Number 41 would go to Coupe Deville. This is the one with Corella's mom in it, and the one with where all the DeVilles get together to try to steal the Dearlys farm. Well, not all together. They don't try to steal the farm together. They steal it individually, but they just all want to steal the Dearlys farm. Well, the property, at least. And I like all the DeVilles, even the inclusion of Ivy again, which is probably my favorite episode with Ivy in it. Mainly because there's more DeVilles, and it's just sillier. Altogether, it's a pretty good episode, and I really do like this one. So, yeah, we'll move on. Number 40 would go to Dog Food Day Afternoon. This episode is pretty good. For some reason, it kind of reminds me of Uzi Does It, now that I think of it, but at the same time, it doesn't. So, we just recently talked about this one 2 weeks ago, and this one is a pretty good one. I still agree. And it's a really funny episode, mainly because, well, Corella is just being her normal old funny self. So there's not much I have to add about this episode. It's really good. And yeah, definitely deserving of the higher half of this whole list ranking. Number 39 would go to Unlucky. So as I said before, I didn't know this till the show, but the spots on Lucky's back is shaped as a horseshoe, which I think is really cool, and I've never known that till the show. And altogether, this episode is a pretty good one, even though I feel like Lucky is just kind of, I guess, unlucky in this episode. But it's okay, I guess. It's a pretty good episode. Like, I think it's way better than the Lucky or the pups getting tortured for the whole episode, right? It's a pretty good one, so we'll move on. Number 38 would go to K is for Kibble. This one's number 38, if I haven't said already. And it's a pretty good episode. Well, it's a special, so it's a pretty good special as well. I think it's a, really good, like I said. So this one is, I guess, the second part of the Detective Spot episode, and it's definitely much better than the Maltese Chicken, which is the first part. Both ones are specials, but this one I feel like just does a better job with telling a interesting, funny story. And it's done way better. It's done better in this episode, in my opinion. Altogether, both episodes are decent, but this one definitely being better, so we'll move on. Number 37 would go to Home is Where the Bark Is. So this is the very first episode of the series, and it's a really good one. I think they do a really good job showing the characters, and this one is when they move to, I guess, their Dearly farm right next to Corella's house. It's a really good episode, and yeah, I've always liked it. Number 36 would go to Bad to the Bone. This is another one I've changed my mind on. So before, in the Season 1 ranking, this one was number 2? I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a good episode, but I don't know if it's number 2 for Season 1. It's pretty close, but not number 2. It's, well, I guess it's okay. It's not okay. I like the episode. It's good. It's just that there's some others in season 1 that are better. This is the one um that Rolly joins the Mooch in the Game Club. It's a pretty good episode. Like Lovin' and Flea, I'm just like, I don't know, way better. Huh. So, I mean, there's not much I have to add about this one. It's just that it's not number 2 for season 1 anymore. It'd be more like number 7 or 6. It's a good one, just not quite as good as others. Number 35 would go to Our Own Diggs. It still ticks me off how the pups and Spot don't do anything to Green Pug, who has literally taken over their home base. Yeah, there's episodes where I don't mind Green Pug, and then there's others that I completely despise him in, and this is one of them for sure. He's just so obnoxiously annoying in this episode, and I really want him to turn into hay at the end as well, because of his obnoxious behavior. But besides the annoyance of Green Pug, the episode is pretty good, and I don't really mind it. And it's kind of interesting as well. It's pretty interesting. And altogether, it's a decent episode. So, let's move on. Number 34 would go to Two Faces of Anita. I really like this special. It's a really good one. I've always liked it from season 2, and I still do to this day. It's a really interesting and awesomely good special. It's like if Anita, but was bad. I mean, it's a pretty silly special. Sure, it's mean towards Anita, but I mean, it's interesting. Like, it's fun to watch for sure. And this one does kind of remind me of the season 1 episode. What's that one called? I'll never be able to remember that one, but it reminds me of that one from season 1 that I'll tell you in a minute. The Dogs of DeVille, that's what it's called, from season 1. And both episodes being really good. I think this one's probably better, though. And they're just both interesting and very good. So let's move on. Number 33 would go to Cadpig Behind Bars. Yeah, I really do like this one as well. This is the one where Cadpig goes to the dog pound. I don't know why. Because she hangs on to the back of a truck, so they just pick her up and take her to the dog pound, I guess. It's a pretty good episode. As I said before, it's one of my favorites from season 2. Well, the first part of season 2. And altogether, I mean, my opinions haven't changed. It's a good episode, and it's one that I'll always enjoy. Number 32 would go to Do the Right Thing. Oh yeah, I like this episode for sure. Even though it was number 8, I think it was on the in the ranking of that part, it's number 32 on this part. And in this part, it's definitely on the higher side. That part was like more in the middle. I still think it's a really good episode. Like, there's definitely many funny things. Like, every scene with Corella, Jasper, and Horace is just hilarious. And it's very entertaining to watch. And I always have loved this episode, and I still do to this day. So, let's move on, I guess. Number 32 would go to... Sorry, not number 32. Number 31 would go to Lord of the Termites. I really do like this episode. This is like the Home Alone movie, just in the 101 Dalmatians episode. It's a really good one. It's one that I've always enjoyed. And yeah, there's not much I really have to add. It's a good episode, so let's move on. Number 30 would go to Fountain of Youth. This one I always think is a special, but it really isn't. It's just a normal 10-minute episode. I've always liked this one where Corella thinks she's old, but she really isn't. And, well, I've already talked about this episode. It's silly, and it's one that I've always enjoyed. So, I mean, let's move on. I didn't know what the words were. Let's move on. Number 29 would go to... Guys, I'm sorry. Number 29 is Cupid Pups. I've already filmed that one for some reason. I don't know why I did, but it's not one of the early ones. Cupid Pups is number 29, so I'm not going to show the clip because I already did. I don't know why I did. It was a mistake. So anyway, I guess we'll move on to number 28, which is The Nose Knows. This episode is a pretty good episode. It does kind of remind me of Bad to the Bone, but it just isn't. And altogether, I mean, it's pretty good. It's better than Bad to the Bone, in my opinion. So, yeah, let's move on. Number 27 would go to Virtual Lucky. I didn't mention this is number 27. So, Virtual Lucky is a pretty good episode where Lucky and Cruella get stuck in a video game together, and even eventually Rolly and Cadpig as well. And it's a pretty good episode, so yeah, I guess we'll just move on. Number 26 would go to good old Full Metal Pullet. So this is one of those tripod episodes, and it's a pretty good one, even though Green Pug, Lucky, and just bleh. There's a few things about this episode that are just not awesome, but, I mean, that doesn't make me hate this episode. It's definitely a pretty good one. I think it's a pretty good one, and besides the cringy part at the end, it's pretty good. Number 25 would go to An Officer and a Gentle Dog. This is Full Metal Pullet, but better, mainly because there's no cringy moments in this episode, which is probably why I like it better than Full Metal Pullet, but minus the cringy moments, I still think it is better altogether than Full Metal Pullet anyway. But Full Metal Pullet's still a good episode, and same with this one, just that this one is better. Number 24 would go to The Great Cat Invasion. So this is the one with Tripod, Green Pug, and all those cats at Cruella's farm that end up at the Dearly's farm or something like that. It's a pretty good episode. I still really like it. So, let's move on. Number 23 would go to Cruella World. So this is the Disney World, just now Cruella-ified, called Cruella World now. Yeah, this one is definitely a really good episode. I mean, what else need I really say about this one? It's a silly special, or is it a special? I don't quite remember. Yeah, it is. It's a good episode, and it's a good special. Oh my god. It's a good special, and I really enjoy it. So there's not much I have to add. It's good, so yeah, let's move on. Number 22 would go to Shipwrecked. This one is a classic. It's a really good special. I really have always enjoyed this one, and I still do. I mean, I've already talked about it. If you watched that video already, it's a very good special, and it's definitely one of my favorites. It's on the highest half. Like, there's first half, second half, third half, and then this half. This is on the highest half. It's a good episode for sure. Number 21 would go to Treasure of Swamp Island. I think I said number 21, right? Yeah, I probably did. So this is the one where Cruella tries to hide treasure, and she ends up hiding her treasure inside of a cave, which, I mean, it's pretty silly. And altogether, I mean, the episode is silly. So, I mean, there's not much I have to add. It's a good episode, for sure, so let's move on. Number 20 would go to Double Dog Dare. Oh yeah, I like this one a lot for sure. Double Dog Dare is a good classic. I really like how Lucky and Spot go in and try to steal Cruella's mask, and she gets, I don't know, she wakes up and gets angry, and then her house just ends up getting flooded. This episode not only is a good episode, it's also pretty sweet too whenever Spot saves Scorch, which is something they probably wouldn't do, but okay. I mean, altogether, it's definitely a really good episode. Definitely one of my favorites. Number 19 would go to Dog's Best Friend. Oh yeah, I've changed my mind on this one too. Before, it was kind of like, I guess, and mid of season 1 ranking. But now that I watch it, I guess, more often, I find it really good. Like, definitely higher parts of it. This one is just so sweet. I love Blaze. He's such a cute character who just should have been in the show longer than just one episode. Like, a lot of the, I guess, side characters that are in the show for one episode are pretty boring and forgettable, but Blaze is not. I honestly would much rather see him than pretty much half the characters in the show who are main characters, which, I mean, yeah, I thought the last episode was pretty sweet. Where Spot tries to save Scorch, but I think this one is even sweeter yet, where the Dearlys find Blaze and Rully tries to save Blaze as well, and of course at the end, returning Blaze to his owner. This one is definitely one of my favorites. Number 18 would go to No Train, No Gain. I've noticed that people don't really like this one as much as others because, I don't know, maybe they think it's boring. But in my opinion, it's just another classic Cruella, Jasper, Horse, and Pups and Spot episode. And also the Colonel's in this episode as well, so he gets involved with everything the Pups and Spot do. And it's a pretty decently good episode. Actually, by decently good, I mean it's a very good episode for sure. Actually, it's special. Very good special for sure. So, let's move on. Number 17 would go to Walk a Mile in My Tracks. I really do like this episode, and even though it was my favorite from part 3, I think it was, it's not my favorite overall. It makes number 17, which is good, or 16, whatever number I'm at. And I obviously, it's a good episode. It's just not quite as good as the other 16. And altogether, I mean, it's still definitely very enjoyable. The reason why it's probably not my favorite episode ever is probably because of Green Pug and Cornelia, Spot's mom, and that's probably the reason why it's not, like, top 5 or something. But it's very close. It's a very good episode for sure, so let's move on. Number 16 would go to Every Little Crooked Nanny. Yeah, so this is the one where Cruella de Vil dresses up as, Nanny, and I don't know why, because she thinks that, Duchess and Princess are these really fancy people that, I don't know, Cruella wants to meet, that she thinks Anita is hiding when they're really just, Anita's horses. Yeah. I've already talked about this episode. It's really good for sure. Number 15 would go to The Making of. Oh yes, this one is a classic for sure. I love The Making of. It shows you every silly way that the Pups wanted the new series to go. And there's a bunch of just silly moments in the show, in this episode, in this special. It's very silly, and it's definitely deserving of top 15. Very close to top 10, right? But it does have a few, very little few just okay scenes. That's why it's not in a top 10. But altogether, it's definitely very good. Number 14 would go to Shake, Rattle, and Wolf. As I mentioned before, I really do like this episode. I think it's just so goofy and silly. And, well, of course, the goofy and silly moments are the Cruella, Jasper, and Horse moments. But still a very good episode nonetheless. I mean, it's just so silly. Like, what do I need to say about this episode? Definitely one of the best episodes of the whole show. Number 13 would go to... Real quick. Do you guys remember that mistake that I talked about the Cupid Pups? I've already said it. No, I was right before. I put Cupid Pups down twice by accident. The number 29 spot that I thought was Cupid Pups is actually Valentine's Days, the one with, Roger making that heart for Anita. That one's Valentine's Days, not Cupid Pups, I'm sorry. Cupid Pups is number 41-ish, or whatever that one is. Valentine's Days is 29, I'm sorry. So anyway, I just wanted to say that because I just realized that. So anyway, let's continue on with number 13, I think I said. Close but no cigar. So this is that fair episode that I talked about. and my opinions haven't changed. It's a very, very good episode for sure, and definitely top 15 for me. Is it my favorite? No, but is it close? Absolutely. So let's, I guess, move on to the next one. Number 12 would go to My Fair Moochie. Oh yeah, I really like this episode a lot. It's a very good episode for sure, and like I said, Mooch is by far one of the worst characters in the show. Except for this episode and one other that I'll be talking about soon after. So, My Fair Moochie is pretty much what would happen if Mooch turned, well, I don't know, if he was actually not a bully, and if he was actually nice. This one is really sweet too. I think Cadpig and Mooch should just marry each other. It's just a sweet, I don't know, a sweet, good episode for sure. And it's too bad Cadpig ditches Mooch at the end, in place of instead just goes out with that Chihuahua instead, which is kind of odd. But other than that, this episode is definitely very good. Number 11 would go to The Dalmatian Vacation Part 2. This one is definitely a really good finale, but I still think Part 1 and Part 3 are probably a little better than this part. But this one is still definitely very enjoyable as well, don't get me wrong, but it's just not quite as good as the first and finale part. Definitely still very good, though, so don't get me wrong, it's very good, just not as good as the other ones. We finally made it to the top 10, with number 10 going to Leisure Lawsuit. We're starting off the top 10 list with a very good episode, Leisure Lawsuit. This is the one where Cruella fakes an injury and pretends to be waited on and gets waited on hand and foot by Roger and Anita. It's a very silly episode and definitely top 10 for me. The Dalmatian Vacation Part 3. This one is, I think, in my opinion, better than the second part. I'm not quite sure about the first part, though. The first part is just so silly. So, I mean, they're all silly, but the first one's probably my favorite out of the three. Third one is definitely pretty good, though. And, I mean, they're all really good. How about that? It's just that third one is good, too. Just not as good as first, but better than second. So, the end. Number 8 would go to The Dalmatian Vacation Part 1. This one, in my opinion, is probably better than the other two, mainly because of the humor, the amount of humor in this episode. The second and third do have humor, but this one is definitely the most humor, mainly because it's another Cruella, Roger, Anita, and Pups, I guess, episode. I mean, all three of them is, but this one's probably my favorite out of the three. And, well, top 10, of course, as well. So, there's not much I have to add. So, let's move on. Number 7 would go to Snow Boundaries. This one is definitely a really good. I keep thinking this one's a special, but it's not. It's just a regular old episode. Regular old 10-minute episode. It's definitely very good, though, and it could use the extra minute. But hey, I'm happy with what we got. It's a really good episode for sure, and definitely top 10 for me. Number 6 would go to 12 Angry Pups. Yeah, this one is very good for sure. This is another one of those episodes where Mooch is actually being nice in. Well, at least not being mean or being a bully. Kind of like My Fair Moochie, but nothing bad at all in this episode. Unlike My Fair Moochie, where Cadpig ditches Mooch, which is kind of out of character for her, at least nothing too bad happens in this episode. It's a good episode. I think it's kind of sweet too. Mainly the dipstick part. It's a very good episode, though. It's top 10 for me. So, let's move on. Number 5 would go to Smoke Detectors. We made it to the top 5 with Smoke Detectors starting this off. Oh yeah, this one is a really good one for sure. I love it. How Corella's just trying her best not to smoke when she clearly wants to do nothing but smoke. And, well, it's a really good episode for sure. And, yeah, let's move on. Number 4 would go to A Christmas Cruella. Oh yeah, this is definitely my favorite episode of Season 1, and it's definitely the top 5 best episodes of all. Very good episode for sure. Let's move on. Number 3 would go to Barn Boozled. Oh yeah, this one is really good for sure. I mean, the ending is just a whole bunch of silly Cruella moments, and yeah, that's all I need. Just a whole bunch of silly Cruella moments, and then I'm satisfied. But seriously, altogether the episode is definitely very good and pretty close to perfect. So, let's move on. Number 2 would go to Lucky All-Star. As I mentioned before, this one is just very sweet. It's definitely my favorite episode with Tripod in it. And yeah, I think the main reason why I like Tripod is because he's missing a leg, poor thing. But, I mean, he just moves around like any other normal pup would. At least he tries to, at least. And altogether, it's definitely a very sweet episode for sure. Now, let's move on. And number 1, and my personal favorite episode of the 101 Dalmatian, the series episodes of all time, is You Say It's Your Birthday. This one is perfect. Like, even though it's a special and it's 20 minutes long, it's fast paced, and I can see why it is a special now. Unlike some specials where I feel like it just slowly moves on, this one is a very good one for sure, and it's so funny too. And, well, there's not much I have to add. And with that, I hope that you all enjoyed these two, I guess, ranking of the whole show, because, well, you all enjoyed all the parts, so I hope you all enjoyed ranking the whole show as well. And, well, I'll see you next time in the next ranking, whenever that could be. So I'll see you next time. Bye!